Lost Art, episode 13. My name's Finbar. You know the drill. This is episode 13, a hacker's guide to being a VJ. No, not a VJ, but a VJ. I'll explain more in a minute. So why this episode? Well, lots of people have bought my new album, The Code. Thank you, everyone, for buying it. But people have asked me questions about the film that comes with it, the visuals. How did I create those visuals? You know, what was the process? And when I explained that I did it live on the fly, people are like, wow, how does that work? So this is what this episode is for. It's there to uncover this for you. Now, why would I do that? Well, for me, I'm always looking at how do I create a better product for an audience? And how do I try and translate what's in my head? And for my album, The Code, even though it's got all these crazy codes hidden in each track, I really wanted to provide a visual experience as well. And so many of you may or may not know I have a background in motion graphics. You've seen the intro trailer for Raiders of the Lost Art and many other things. I create all those. I was searching for how best to do this, and I came up with this workflow. And this is the workflow I'm going to talk about today. Now, you might have heard of the word DJ. Everyone's heard of that. And VJ, video jockey. Well, for me, an AVJ, it's a little term that I've been calling, but the term AVJ is an audio visual jockey. And for me, it's someone who creates their own music, but also then can create visuals to go with that music. That's that audio visual. And the jockey component of it is on the fly, live mixing the visuals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this video up into a few different headings. We're going to go through the very basic setup of equipment you need, and then I'm going to go through the process and the workflow. So stay with us. Let's go into some of the visuals I created for The Code, and then we'll come back. Okay, so getting started, we have our machine controller and our Mac running Resolume software. Obviously, the machine controller has to be connected to the Mac via USB. Once that's done, we're going to get it into external Midi controller mode. That's the machine. So we're going to switch that on. When we switch it on, it's going to come up with basically an instruction which asks us on the right screen to actually hold down the Shift and Channel button. So we're going to hold the Shift, hit Channel, and now the machine is ready to go. This is going to be our controller that we're going to use for our live video creation. Okay, so let's now get over to Resolume. Okay, so the next stage is to actually go and get the software. So we're going to go to resolume.com and on your browser, and you'll find that you'll come to a web page. At the current stream of this video, this is the current web page. You want to go to and find the download link tab. And once you do that, it will take you to the right download for your operating system, whether you're on Mac or PC. What we're going to do is we're going to download the package, which has got Resolume Avenue, which is the one we want, not Alley. And it will come with the Alley software, which we'll talk about, which is really, really important. And it's basically a 30-day free trial, so you can play around with it. Okay, so what you're going to do is click that and download it. And then we're going to park that for the moment and install the software. So we'll be ready to launch it and go through the interface in a minute. So now that we've actually looked at setting up Maschine and downloading Resolume, what we need to do is think about the content that we're going to put into this. What video content are we going to use? Now, you might have your own clips. There are tons of different video loops available online. Some are royalty free, some are free. You're just going to have to check the license to see if you can actually use them for pre-recorded works to make sure that they are free to distribute if you want to. But there are some great sites that I use and I used for sourcing material from the code, as well as creating stuff myself. But let's look at a couple of those. A couple of the ones that I like to use. I use this site here, which is ArtGrid.io. This is a fabulous site. This is a site that has a lot of different high resolution footage. Once you subscribe to the membership, you can get it in different sort of resolutions depending on your subscription. And you can just, click on a file. If you like it, you can just add it to your card as part of your membership. And if I add it, I'm logged in and it will then add to my system. And then I'll be able to go to my top here and look at my catalog and my collections. And so you might notice that was something I used on the intro for this actual Raiders of the Lost Art. So I got some of this footage from here, from this ArtGrid site. So it's a great site if you want to get some really high resolution, high quality footage shot in any different style. And you can basically search for anything. The other one that I love using is this one, VJ Loops. VJLoops.com is a great site. If you want abstract sort of stuff, here you can just roll over things and it will then give you an example of what it looks like. If you've got obviously once you're a member, you can download them, you can buy them, you can have, there's different licenses you can use. And so it's just like a normal royalty-free license site, but there's so many different categories in here you can choose from, and they're really great. And some of these loops have alpha channels and transparency. Some don't, but don't worry because Resolume handles all of that. So, what I tended to do with my album, The Code, is I storyboarded what I wanted to say with each track. And then I went and looked at what I could create myself in sort of Apple Motion or any other graphics applications. And the ones that I couldn't, I would just come here and I would source them. Once you start compositing them, the actual clips take on a life of their own. Once you've got multiple clips stacked on top of each other, they're sort of unrecognizable in a lot of ways anyway. So great sites. Look, this stuff isn't cheap, but in the big scheme of things, if you're putting a lot of quality into your work, you don't want to be represented by really poor quality visuals. When I say expensive, it's not super expensive, it's just not free. So, but what I encourage you to do is go to Google, type in video DJ loops or VJ loops, definitely look at ArtGrid, and just look, you can play around with, because you've got the demo of this, just go on to, any of these sites and download some of it. Just go type in free VJ loops and you'll be able to download a bunch and play with them in the demo version of this Resolume. So that's content. Now let's get into playing with Resolume. Okay guys, this is the interface for Resolume. It looks confusing, but it's probably because I've loaded one of my sessions up in here. But let's go through the interface and I'll try and make head or tail of it for you. So if we look in the middle of the actual interface here, there's a number of different tabs: Ministry, Imaginarium, Senchai. These are actually tracks off my album. So I've got them tabs set up to be all different clips. So they are different tracks or different compositions within the same project. I've got 32 gig of RAM here, so it allows me to do that. Plus I'm lazy, so I like to just switch between them. But you may find you just will run one tab at a time. But look, that's what they are here. But let's go through the core part of the interface. So what we have is just like Photoshop, we have a layer system here on the left-hand side. And the layers are layers where you will stick video clips on top of each other and blend them together. And they obviously will be running their own sort of sequences and motion, but you'll see what I mean about blends in a minute. But look, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, you might see the blue changing here, layer 4, layer 5, and it goes up and up and up. And I've got a bunch of layers. I've got some audio layers at the top, which I'll explain in a minute. And each layer has its own set of controls. a bypass, which is this one, a solo, which is this one, a bunch of different blend modes, which we'll talk about very quickly. And then you've got, you can get rid of the layer. Then we have audio sliders here, video sliders here, so on, so on, so on. So these are the layers, and this is where you would drag clips from your inventory, which from sources over here, you would drag clips onto these empty tiles. And so whichever layer, you might have one layer which might be special effects. The other the bottom layer might be actual real video files. Whichever way you want to set it up and organize your structure is up to you. As you see, I don't really have a structure. I'm pretty chaotic, nature of Finbar, but that's just what I like. Then we have different sort of play controls and stuff on the side if you want to see that. And so these are the clips. But you might see over here on the very lower corner, these are some clips that are playing at the moment. If I bring one up, you might notice the bottom changing. That's because I'm using the video opacity slider to bring that clip up. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. But we'll go through that. Now what we have over this side are columns. And the columns, just like an Excel spreadsheet, the columns contain rows of clips. Now the way I do it is I actually have parts of a track. So I'll copy an audio track a number of different times, and I will edit the start and end point of the segment of the audio track out of the track. So for example, I record a whole song. I drag the song from my library. I'll go to my sources, I'll go and load a file, and I'll drag it into the setup. Then I'll copy it over a number of different columns. What this allows me to do is once I go to column, let's say this column, I can actually go over to the bottom boxes. Now, the bottom box that I'm particularly interested in is the actual clip box. And so that's this box here. And allows me to set up different things. It allows me to set an in and an out point. You can see that little in point there, an out point. This one will have a different one. You'll see the little in point and out point there. So I can actually have different trigger points. And you'll see why that's important in a moment when I plug the machine in. So I have one track and I split it across a number of different columns with different regions that I want to trigger. And so underneath that, then I have a number of different clips that are happening. So we can layer a whole bunch of different video clips on top of each other under one column. And each one of these layers has its own controls. This would be a nightmare if you were trying to control this from your mouse. But you'll see in a minute when we're controlling from a machine, we can get used to playing around, finding some clips that we like, stacking them on top of each other, play around with blend modes, and then in real time, hit this record button over here and record a file in real time as we're jamming with it by playing on the machine interface. So let's just go through it again. A layer can be across a number of columns. You might have exactly the same file in the layer and change a number of files on top of it. So each layer exists over a number of different columns. Columns are segments in the track. You drag files into each tile. You can drag them around, so you can actually just go and say, grab one and drag it over to another tile, for example. So if I said this one here, I could drag that over and just let go there, and that's where it would go. So you can drag, copy, paste, et cetera, et cetera. Now, these are loops that I've copied from that previous location and some that I've created myself. Now, if we look at the bottom corner here, when I click through the columns, you will notice the videos are actually changing. Okay, and you're only maybe seeing one video there. That's because I'm not automating or playing in real time. So if we say column 6 and we look at this lower corner, you'll see stuff happening. If I bring one up, you'll see this ball appear. And then I pull the opacity down and it will then disappear. This one will bring in another effect. And these are clips that I've purposely loaded. So if I want to solo that one, for example, and I load it up, there it is there. That's what this clip looks like. That's soloed. If I want to bypass it, that's bypassed. And that's back in, bypassed. You'll see it on the big monitor when, like you would have seen the clips earlier. So this is where I do the organizational layout of all the different files. Now, it takes a lot of time. It's not just drag anything in, but you can also drag things in and play with them. I just wanted to very quickly go through this concept of columns and layers and the different sort of controls on the layers. Obviously, there's stuff down here, BPM, you can tap sync, so you can play your song and you can tap to get the tempo right. You can also double click and type in your tempo. And so that's sort of the top part of the actual interface. Now, as we get to the bottom of the interface, we have a number of things. We looked at the clip properties box before, and that allows us to set up cue points, different transports. We have controllers, which I'll show how to automate that in a minute, etc., etc., etc. This is also where you would drag effects onto it. So if we wanted to drag an effect onto the clip, we would just click, let's say bloom, we would just click that and drag it over and drop it on this clip. So it's very, very simple to automate and to sort of add effects to things. Then we've got the layer. So this box here, the properties in this box, opacity, affect the whole layer across the composition. The clip is the individual clip that we've got highlighted there, for example. You'll see it will update and change. The layer box is the layer properties, and they give you, different heights, opacities, transformation, scale. You can also drag an effect onto a layer. And so, you can do a whole bunch of really cool things with an entire layer in one hit. Then we have the composition, which is the entire file. So these are basic boxes that allow us to control different things on the actual whole presentation or just parts of it. Okay, so we open our files, we drag the files on, as I explained to you, we drag them into the playlist. Now, this is where it gets interesting, is where we start to then look at, okay, what clips do we like and what does it look like if we start to play around with the opacity or the blend mode. Now, this is currently at what's called an add blend mode. Now, I can go to alpha and you're not seeing much of a difference there. Let's see what 50 mask looks like. You can see now that looks completely different. See down here, that's the 50 mask, and as we pull that out, it'll brighten up and then go back. So we might like that. We might want to try, and this is just about playing around and finding out what you like. Okay, so that was the app with one of my sessions loaded in it. It might look confusing, but I did that just so you could see what a project looks like with files in it. I believe it makes it a little bit easier to understand the architecture of layers and columns when you see files in there. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the app and launch it like it will come up with you once you've downloaded this trial version with nothing in it. Okay, but I hope by now you've downloaded a couple of clips and you've got them in a directory and you know where that directory is. You will follow a similar process to what I'm following here to actually get your session set up with different files loaded in it. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go up to composition and we're going to actually load a blank sample canvas. It will ask me to save and open, and I'm going to do that. And so then it's going to come up with a brand new, fresh, empty little template. This is what you should be seeing when you actually launch yours for the very first time, your demo. Now, you should know where your footage is that you've downloaded. And what it gets you to do is to go to this bottom box here and go to Files. Now, you will navigate to your files. Mine are sitting here in this directory. Now, the first thing, before you do anything, you have to convert your files from MPEG, MOVs, any of the different file formats you have into DXV format. This format is, if you start putting a couple of different MPEGs or movies on top of each other, they won't run properly. They'll glitch and they'll hang. So the way you do that is you launch this other app that came down with your download called Ali. Now, the Ali app that you're going to get is just opens like this, and it's going to ask you where your video files are. So you go and navigate to your video files, and once you've actually got into your video files, then you actually then say that what you want to convert them to, and you want to convert them to DXV. And you only load those DXV files into the Resolume session. Don't load anything else. So if you download anything from the internet, make sure you've converted it to DXV. I actually have put them in a folder here called DXV. And you'll notice here it says DXV3, high quality, no alpha, 1920 by 1080. So you want to make sure that that's the format. Now, once you've got a bunch of files, you can shift select, grab a bunch, and just drag them across. And you'll see they've all applied over a layer. Now, if I want to click that column, you'll see the little playback box. Yours will be bigger because I'm running on very large screens. Yours will be a lot bigger size window. But if you click the columns, you'll see the different types of effects that are going on here. Okay. The thing about it though is if we want to start trying one on top of each other, we just click on the name of the file and drag it up and stack it onto the second layer. Now, if we go back to column 1 and we look at this graphic here, let's pull the video opacity down and you'll see the video looking a certain way. It's unfortunately, if I had another monitor, I could show you what it would look like on another monitor. It's just very, very hard to do that. But as I move this up, you will see it change. And if I put it up 100%, you'll see it change again. So that blend, you can see how it gives you a really interesting sort of look. Now, if I grab this one, for example, and put this on layer 3, right, now you will see layer 3, full opacity, and now moving down. And so this is the concept of playing around with different blend modes, as we looked at before, 50 difference, dodge, blends, blah, blah, blah. By playing around with this, you might find a look that you really, really like. And you might want to take a note of the settings. And we'll start to animate these in a minute or automate these with Maschine. But just to give you an example, if you keep them on add and you start playing around with the opacity, you'll start to get a different feel for what they look like. And that's in column 1. Now, in column 2, we might say, look, we want the same base layer, so we want to copy that over. So we'll option click. And now by option clicking, we've got exactly the same layer represented on column 2. In column 2, it might be a different part of the song. So in column 2, we might have a different effect. This one. Now, if I click on the clip, you'll see the bottom box showing the actual clip. Okay, that's the green thing. If I click this one, it's changing. But the top one is actually giving me my preview monitor. So if I say, look, that clip looks all right, let's click on that. Okay, let's put that one over here. So when I click to column 2, I'm going to have a different sort of look. I'll bring that up a bit and get the blend just the way I like it, just like that. So now what I've done is I've created 2 different columns of files that might represent a different part of the song. It could be the verse, it could be the chorus. You might want to just sit around with Maschine and be automating this, playing around with that, playing around with the actual, whether it's going to play in forwards or reverse, which is this one, whether it's going to go to the end and loop, whether it's going to continue, whether it's going to, there's all these different interesting sort of ways that the file can bounce backward and forward, one after another. And all of those controls also are available when we go to our boxes down here. So whether we're going to be in the clip or the column or the layer box gives us a lot of different control over the actual whole individual layer. But if we want to particularly work on this one Blocks Nightmare, when I click on it, you'll notice it updates here. And then we've got a whole different sort of functionality here. I can make it half speed, for example, just by clicking that. Okay, I can bring it up to full speed. I can double it, and you'll see the duration change here, 10 seconds. Now it's 20 seconds. Bring it back to 10. We can change the speed slider here. Okay. If we're looking at this green on the left-hand lower side, and we want to start to look at some different effects we can apply to it. For example, if I want to put a bender scope on it, I can then just click and drag that and drop it down. Now, if you have a look at that clip, you can see how amazing that looks. Now, I'm just going to switch that on and off to give you an example. So I'll bypass it, be looking at this lower left side of the screen, and I'll bypass the bender scope. I'll bypass it now. There it is. That's bypassed, and that's on. Now, what's great about this is every single effect we can then automate as well via Maschine. So we can actually change the divisions. Look at this. That can change all in real time as we're playing through our Maschine. We can change blend modes, change presets. We can then say, look, I like that, but I'm going to add another thing. I'm going to put cube tiles on here. So I'm going to drag another effect. Now have a look at it. It's turned into a cube. And so there's some quite interesting different ways you can actually start to create visual graphics and you can automate. So every one of these different effects has a bunch of different parameters that we will be able to actually automate in real time in a minute. So by going to column 1, it might be the intro to our song, and we might want to we might be automating this in and out, and then we might get to the verse, and then we might want this, and then we might want to switch some of the different effects on and off or play with them. It would just be really, really interesting to see how that builds. But it's as simple as dragging your files, the clips, once you've got them as DXVs, into the different columns. Think about it on a piece of paper. Cut your song up into different sections. Think about what you want that might want that to be visually represented. You can have tons of different layers. So you might just have one column, which is one section of the song, and that section might have 20 layers on it. And you might be moving in and out of those layers on that particular part of the song. And then you'll kick over to this column. And don't worry, you're going to be able to do all of this from the machine interface, the actual controller. So as I'm playing, I would hit a button and it will go to column 1, the first part, which is the first part of the song, as I'm listening to it and controlling it all in real time with knobs and sliders on the machine. Then I'll click the second pad right at the right time and it will kick over to the next column. It'll all be automated and I'll have this fully tactile interface. But basically what I'm trying to give you an understanding of is there's all of these effects in this program and they're real time and they're amazing. These are just some of the inbuilt effects, and some of these effects are so controllable that you can actually change the whole look of your whole project with just one turn of a knob. Okay, so let's go over the steps. Let's look at what we've done so far. What we've done is we've downloaded a demo version of Resolume. We've gone and sourced some content from Google, some VJ loops. We've brought them in. We've opened Alley. We've converted them to DXV files. We've opened Resolume, blank session. We've navigated to our files, and we've dragged them into our tile area, which is either in columns or layers. We've played around with some of the different opacities. We might have looked at playing them in forward, reverse, slowing down the speed, speeding them up, playing around, blending them together and seeing what effects that we get. We've then applied some effects. There's a ton of different effects. We've only touched on a couple, but every single function, every single knob, every single button inside Resolume can be mapped to the machine controller. So bear that in mind. Whilst I don't want to blow your mind, what I'm trying to do here is to get you to sort of understand that there are some tools that very quickly you can get up and be creative with. But now I just want to talk about one last sort of function that's in the Resolume software, which is important, is the generators. The generators aren't effects that you apply to a clip. They're like standalone generators. They generate an effect. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go into that now, and I'll explain the generators. And then after that, then what we're going to do is we're going to start to show you how it works when we plug machine in, and then how do we map the MIDI controllers to the certain knobs. Okay, so let's carry on. Okay, so now we're back in Resolume and we're going to talk about generators. In the previous area, we talked about applying effects by going to the clip, by clicking on the clip, by going to an effect, and by dragging the effect into the box and seeing the effect that is applied here, and looking at the effect in the area and being able to switch it off, switch it on, etc., and watching the different applications of effects that it's applying to the clip. But what a generator is, we're going to talk about generators now, is a generator is something that generates its own clip by itself. You don't apply it to a clip. And so the way to do that is, let's go and select an empty area, an empty tile, and you'll see that we have an empty clip area. Now, if we sort of drag one of these in, now what we'll do is it's created a generator, and you'll see at the top this thing moving here, so which is tunnel lines. Now, if I move it up and make it full screen, there it is there. So you can see it applying. Now, I've got a whole bunch of different controls. We've got the blue color here. We can actually change it so you can see it in yellow, green. We can change the line width, make it nice and thick, make really thick, really obvious like that. We can go to presets and say donut, presets spinning. Hopefully you can see that here. Wormhole, And, you know, we can actually play around with all these different things, the zoom settings, the frequency, how fast it is, how much it is moving horizontally, vertical. And so this all sits under this tunnel lines area here. And we've got all different colors we can play with. So there's a lot of different functionality we can play around with to generate something. Now, that's not an effect on a clip, it generates by itself. And there is a number of different ones in here. So some of my tracks, in Journeyman, for example, the guitar solo is like this tunnel effect. That is all created live in this app, and it's all controlled via the Maschine controller. So it gives a lot of flexibility. You can apply effects to clips. You can play around with the clips without effects and create effects with the clips. You can create generators. It's a very, very full-featured app. Now, let's talk about audio. So before we talked about the video clips and creating them as DXVs, etc., etc., etc. The way I like to work with audio, I think I mentioned before that what I do is let's create a new layer here. So we've now got layer 5. What I try and do is I have one track and I apply it over the different columns with different start and end points, and then I have different sort of clips happening underneath it. So what I do is I go over to I can go and look in my directory and go and look for it, or I can actually just go and find the directory here with this drop down. The way you do that is when you navigate to a folder, you just click your little love heart here. Job done. It saves it in this drop down list. So if I said Sensei, here's the track, and I drag it over, I just drag it on like I did before. Now I've got a track in that actual column. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to option click that and copy it over a number of different times. And so let's say I've got verse, chorus, a number. I might want to have 4 or 5 different variations on that. Now, the way I work it is Machine's going to be triggering these different columns for different parts of the song. So if I said, okay, this starts at the beginning, but I want this to start somewhere else in the track, what I do is I come down, make sure the clip is selected, and I come down to the clip box here, and I select a different part of the song. So I might go, I want it coming in here. Okay, so let's move that a bit. Now I can do this, I can scrub it, I can double click and type exact timing, so I can go right down to really, really fine details. And what happens now is when I click on the column, it starts the song. Actually, I've got to be in play mode here. I might want to tighten that up. Now I've just paused it there, and that time is 1:25.817. So I'll click on here and go 1:25.817, etc., etc. I'd type that in. Let me do that. 817. Hit return. Now that's set up with the cue point. So now when I click on the columns, got to be in play mode. Sorry. There you go. So basically on the Maschine controller, I'm going to be controlling via pads all the different sections of the song. And then I'm going to be using the different dials and controllers to be able to be live mixing this whilst I'm also recording the video and audio sort of presentation. So then I can actually then output it and fine tune it and job done. My whole album, each track on this was done this way. So I spent a ton of time trying to figure out on a piece of paper, what sort of clips, how would certain visuals work with certain areas of the sounds that I'm trying to create, what might invoke a certain feeling. And so after that research, a ton of work went into actually sourcing the clips. Then it was laying them up into a logical sequence across different columns, working out how many layers I want to play around with. Obviously, the less layers you've got, the better it is from a memory and RAM and optimization point of view. But look, what I'm hoping you get an understanding of now is this is a very full-featured app, but it can also be quite simple. It's a great way to be creative and play around with getting different ideas. Okay, so that being said, now that we have our machine controlled, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the MIDI controls, setting up the MIDI controller so the machine controls this piece of software. Okie dokie. So now we're back in Resolume, and what I've done is I've actually got the Maschine Mark III on a separate camera setup here. Let's now look at how we've connected them, but we need to know how to control Resolume from the machine. So as we know, we've actually connected the MIDI in because in the software we went to Preferences, and just to check it again, Maschine Mark III is here, and we've got MIDI inputs set up here. So we know it's connected. Now, it's very, very simple to set this up. You've just got to have some foresight about how you want this to work. Now, let me give you an example of how I had mine set up. I set this to be the volume. I set each one of these to be a different column. I set these knobs here to be the video blend for each layer. Layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. This to be the bypass for the layers, right? This to be effect on and off for different layers. So each knob and button can be anything. Now let me show you how to do that. We go to shortcuts at the top and we go down to edit MIDI. So on the top drop down, shortcuts, edit MIDI. And you'll see all this green, these light green areas. It's as simple as doing this. If we want the top column, column 1, to be controlled from this key, all we do is we select it. You'll see the little selection thing here. And we just hit the key. And now it's mapped. Select the next one. Key, select. You might see it over here, it's already mapping it. Okay? If I say I want the bypass of, let's say, layer 1, that one, to be this one, I just hit it. And you might see on the software, it's saying it's set to control change 22. And it's a simple matter of me just setting this up. So I might have these as different buttons. These are the columns. I'll play it in a minute and you can see what I'm doing. This could be the volume. This could be tempo. One could be a tap tempo. However you want to configure this, it's as simple as on the software, finding out the interface control you want. Now you might see also in the clips, you can actually change direction of clips. So you might say this will be the clip going in reverse. And the way to do that is just by clicking that box and hitting that button. And it's done. It's mapped. It's that simple. Okay, so it's, and you've got control at the clip level, at the layer level, and at the composition level. You've also got, if we have effects on clips, you've also got control of it there. So if I go to top shortcuts and get out of edit MIDI now we're back in play mode. And you'll see what's going to happen. As I hit a certain key on the controller, right, I've now got different columns playing, right? And I've got no sound because I have number 5 button, mute. So that's mute. So now, beginning the song. Mute. Okay, so now I'm muted. And you can see that I'm changing the parts of the song. Now, if you, let me just see, if you were playing around with this vision mixing, you would see what's happening. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change the layout of the screen so you can see the preview window, and then I'm going to play around with this so you can see how I'm mixing the different effects. Even though it's going to be on a very small screen, you should be able to see what's happening. And then I'll outro with just another small segment of some of the clips off the code so you can now see it in full action. Okay, so here we are in Resolume. I'm playing back the actual clip in full screen, and I've got the little machine controller over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what's going to happen as I start to blend. So this is layer 1, this is layer 2, layer 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So as I blend in layer 2, watch what happens to the video signal. I'm just turning a knob, and you'll see it transforming until the video opacity goes up full, because that layer is on top of the layer at the bottom. Okay, and the blend mode allows us to blend them together. If I go to the next layer up, you'll see it all starting to come in with this. Now, if I pull it down fast, off, up, off, up, off. Now, we've got no music at the moment because I'm talking, but let's actually put the music back on by taking this off, the mute. Now I'm going to switch column to a different scene. Watch this and listen to the music. Fade everything out. So that's it in a nutshell. That's live mixing, becoming an AVJ with Resolume and Native Instruments Maschine 3. So there you have it, guys. This is how I create the visuals from a live mixing perspective by using this piece of hardware with this piece of software. I hope you've got a bit of an understanding of how it works. It is very, very simple. It's a creative tool. You don't have to know every single function in it. It's about playing around and figuring out stuff and just coming across happy accidents. I hope you explore. I hope you get a lot of fun out of this. It doesn't matter whatever MIDI controller you've got. Resolume will work with it. It's pretty straightforward. I just like the Native Instruments stuff. I always have been a fan. If you've got any questions, you know you can always bump them at me. I will try and answer them as best I can. This is not meant to be a deep dive. It's meant to be just an umbrella. But now you should get an idea. Now, when you're watching the visuals for my album, you'll get an idea of exactly how I did it. I put all the work into getting it all set up in the first place, got all my timings right, all the cues, and then I went into record and I just smashed it out and recorded each track. It's as simple as that. So guys, enjoy your week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for being a regular follower of my channel. And if you're not, please subscribe. It means a lot to me. We've all got some great stuff coming up, great interviews. Next week, we've got incredible artist Mark Cook coming up. We've just got a bunch of stuff happening. It's getting busier and busier on this channel. And I love your input and I love all the private messages you send me with stuff that you want to hear, see, do. I'm down. So let's all bandy together. Let's all be Raiders of the Lost Art, and I'll see you next week.